microphones on mute. Now I'm handing over the session to our session convener, Mr. T.K. Ramachandran, Chairman, V.O. Chidambaram Port Trust, for setting the context. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So, thank you very much, Shaili. I welcome all the panel members to this plenary session 3 on day 2 of the Maritime India Summit 2021. I would like to also welcome and namaste to all the delegates, to the Honorable Minister, Port Shipping and Waterways, the Secretary, senior officials and dignitaries, and to everyone else watching this program, namaste again. This is a session on ease of doing business, coastal shipping, hinterland connectivity, and multimodal logistics. It is basically going to be talking about how we can improve the ease of doing business, reduce the costs of doing business, reduce the time for doing business, and how do we go about doing this, either through coastal shipping or hinterland connectivity or multimodal logistics. These are some areas that we will be looking at. So to start with, I will request Shaili, can we play the video?
Maritime India Summit 2021. India has a total coastline of 7,516.6 kilometers, out of which the mainland coastline extends to 6,100 kilometers and islands coastline to 1,197 kilometers. The Indian coastline touches 9 states and 4 union territories. In spite of this vast coastline, only 6% of traffic moves by the coastal route. Road freight accounts for 54% and railways 33% of the cargo transported in the country. India spends around 14.4% of its GDP on logistics and transportation. Logistics through coastal shipping route can play a pivotal role in bringing down logistics cost in the country. During 2019-20, Indian ports handled 253 million tons of coastal cargoes, which is expected to reach 330 million tons by 2025. Improvement in coastal shipping was seen with various initiatives such as priority berthing policy for coastal vessels, discounted charges, exclusive berths, reduction in GST on bunker fuel, etc. Coastal shipping by nature is a broken transport chain with costs incurred in double handling. To address this issue, Government of India is focusing on improving hinterland connectivity and multimodal logistics. For improving hinterland connectivity, more than 235 connectivity projects at an estimated investment of around rupees 2.35 lakh crores have been identified. With the proposed connectivity projects, ports will soon have excellent land and rail connectivity between the north and south, making Indian ports truly multimodal. 35 locations have been identified for development of multimodal logistics parks. Country's first multimodal logistics park, MMLP, being created at Jogighoba in Assam. This park will reduce freight cost by 10% and have cargo capacity of 13 million metric tons, MMT, per year. Ports are also taking various other initiatives to improve ease of doing business and to facilitate hassle-free cargo movement to and from hinterland. The Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, under the dynamic leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister, is developing an integrated approach to ensure cost-effective, hassle-free logistics solutions for the end users to improve India's rankings in ease of doing business and logistics performance index. Due to all these efforts, India has improved its global ease of doing business ranking from the 142nd position during 2014 to the 63rd position during 2020. It has been acknowledged that India, which has conducted a remarkable reform effort, joins the list of top performers for the third year in a row.
Thank you very much. So can we now have the presentation? We actually have a mix of 8 speakers who are going to give us the international perspective, the national perspective, and the private sector perspective on the 3 major verticals that we are seeking to cover in this session. The first pertains to ease of doing business. The second pertains to coastal or what we call short sea shipping. And the last pertains to hinterland and multimodal connectivity. In the ease of doing business session, we have 2 main speakers, Mr. Felder and Mr. Agarwal. And before we start on the first vertical, I'll request Shaili to play the PPT.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is about, as I said, 3 major verticals. Next. The first is ease of doing business. Next. Basically, ease of doing business deals with how day-to-day operations, especially trading across borders, is handled. And this is what ports have to concern themselves with. Next. And as you can see, and as was mentioned in the video, we are now at the 63rd position in the global ease of doing business, and we've come up remarkably well in the last few years. Next. The same point. Next. And in this trading across borders, which is what ports actually handle, there are 8 different components. One is the time and this is all pertaining to exports or imports. And within exports, we have the time and cost element for border compliance, the time and cost element for documentary compliance. And then we have the time and cost elements for import, border compliance and documentary compliance. So there are 8 different aspects on which the markings are given for ease of doing business. Next. And these are the top 10 performers, and amongst them is India. Next. So as I said, the 3 major indices, if you can call them that, one is the time element, the second is the cost element, and the last is the document element. If all these 3 are facilitated, then we have ease of doing business and ease of trading across borders, which is the main aspect that ports handle. Next. Now, what are the initiatives of the government to improve EODB? Of course, this will be covered more in detail by Mr. Pawan Kumar Agarwal, but suffice it to say that some of these measures have already been taken by the government, including last mile connectivity. We view the ports as one link in the entire logistics chain. Therefore, unless the efficiencies are improved across the logistics chain, it is difficult to improve EODD as well as the performance under the logistics performance index. Therefore, last mile connectivity improvements, operational efficiencies, digitization, automation, and then direct port delivery systems, direct port entry systems, then again introduction of container scanners, reduction in paperwork through digitalization, as I said, and then of course having a PCS to share data across the country, across the port community system. These are some initiatives the government has taken for improving ease of doing business. Next. Then we come to the second vertical. We talked about the ease of doing business. Now we come to the second vertical, which is coastal. As you saw in the video, it is important that we go for coastal because of the following reasons. One is pollution reduction, savings in fuel, and of course, reduction in logistics cost. Next. And of course, we being a highly connected country as far as the coast is concerned, it is easily possible for us to move cargo from the north to the south. And given the geography of the country, it is quite feasible, both technically as well as logistically and from the cost perspective. Next. And these are some of the commodities which are currently being moved across the country, and the origin destination studies that have been taken up show that it is possible to shift a substantial proportion of this cargo from the rail and road mode to the coastal mode. Next. And as we already saw, 6% of the country's freight mix, modal mix, comprises coastal and inland waterway traffic, whereas other economies have a much higher share, as you can see, 16 to 24%. And of this, coastal thermal coal alone accounts for about 61%, and of this, major ports handle 75%. So it's a lot of work for the major ports, and these are the ports which handle almost 2/3 of the inland coastal trade among the major ports. Next. And the advantages of coastal shipping, we've already seen over the rail and road, including costs. And as you can see, it's only 0.5 rupees per ton, whereas the comparative figures are 3 and 2 in respect in the case of rail and road. Next. Therefore, some of the initiatives which the MOPSWST has taken include creation of coastal berths, reducing port tariff for coastal traffic, and then green channel clearance, relaxation of cabotage rules, prioritized berthing, and so on. Next. And therefore, but there are problems in coastal shipping. And as you can see that we have the last mile connectivity, the broken chain, and then the need for extra nodes. And then, of course, transshipment, you have to handle it more than once. So we need to really work on reducing these knots or untying these knots in coastal shipping if we are to make it much more effective, much more successful, and much more used as a modal, as a mode for transportation. Next. And then of course, this is the way forward. We'll discuss this more when we come to the Q&A session. Next. And the last vertical is, if we wanted, as I said, connecting to the previous vertical, if we want coastal shipping, we also need good hinterland connectivity, and we need good multimodal integration. And that is what we will talk in third vertical. Next. So we have to have good connectivity, we have to have backup areas, we have to have good equipment, and therefore all this will lead to the successful output. Next. And the importance of hinterland connectivity cannot be overemphasized, because that is where multimodal can work. And ports are uniquely situated in this context, because the airports, the railheads, and the other roadheads can all come to the port, but the ports cannot go to any of them. Therefore, all of them have to come to the ports. So all multimodal has to be created near the ports. Yeah, just. Yeah, next. Yeah, this is about hinterland connectivity. So I think these are other major initiatives of the government of India. Next. Yeah, I think we'll now stop and go on to the next speaker. Shaili, can you? Yeah, I will now introduce Mr. Steve Felder, who's Managing Director of South Asia, AP Moller Maersk. His topic is on ease of doing business. He will give us the international perspective. He has wide experience in the field. Mr. Felder, please take over.
Thank you, Mr. Ramachandran, and namaskar. Good morning to everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening to those that are dialing in from other parts of the world. Thank you to the Minister and to Vicky for the invitation. If we can have the presentation up, please. So in the brief presentation that I'm going to share with you, I'll briefly reflect on how far we've come to enable ease of doing business in India, and also propose a framework for how we can continue to make significant progress as the government and private sector partners in this important objective. To set the context about the topic at hand, I would paraphrase some data that was revealed at the World Economic Forum in 2019, which holds true even today, which roughly went that with today's trade tensions in certain parts of the world, it's quite easy to lose sight of the progress the world has made over the past few decades of economic integration. Since 1990, more than 1 billion people have lifted themselves out of poverty, largely due to growth that was underpinned by global trade. And today, countries are trading more and more, and economies are deepening ties even faster than in the past decades. There are currently more than 280 trade agreements in place around the world at that time, and that compared to just 50 in 1990. And in 1990, trade as a share of global GDP was around 38%, and in 2017, it had reached 71%. So the point is that global trade matters. It matters a lot for us here in India, and ease of doing business is a key anchor and enabler of global trade. I would argue that ease of doing business helps take India to the world and bring the world to India. And it's notable that Prime Minister Modi yesterday invited people to India in his speech and challenged us to let India be our preferred trade destination. I think we should start by recognizing and complimenting the government on really a lot that's been done in this regard. We have a lot of momentum, and it's also, of course, reflected on India's impressive progress on the Global Ease of Doing Business Index, as Mr. Ramachandran had illustrated a few minutes ago. We're clearly on the path towards trade facilitation, and some recent examples include rationalizing the port authorities in an attempt to bring major ports under similar legislation, introducing cabotage reforms which drive down costs and enable easy positioning of containers where exporters need them most, moving to unify various shipping and logistics legislations, which ultimately also simplify the movement of goods and information, port-led development programs that open the doors for multimodal movement across the nation, a strong push for digitization, and I mentioned yesterday in the CEO forum the example of TradeLens, which ultimately brings more transparency in trade, and the conclusion of a number of bilateral trade agreements over the last 5 years. These are very positive and important steps. If I can have the next slide, please. And I think as we reflect on what's been done, I think we also need to reflect on how this can be taken to the next level. And I'd like to propose an ease of doing business framework in the context of global trade, which rests on 4 major pillars, each of which holds significance and can help feed and nurture each other. And they are consistency and long-term vision when it comes to policy making, alignment amongst various government departments and policy intent, transparency amongst all players in the industry, overall improvement in physical as well as digital connectivity to facilitate a more homogeneous growth across cities and hinterlands. And I'd like to share a few thoughts on each of these pillars, if we can move forward, please. On the first pillar, focus on infrastructure development is a task that will arguably never be fully complete, and this will need to continue for several decades. Many improvements are already underway. A lot more can be done, especially on landside and waterway connections. If I can have the next slide, please. I was therefore delighted to see the launch of the Maritime Vision 2030, which will be so important. The DFC is a striking example of progress and promises to be a game changer, but we need more of these groundbreaking out-of-the-box infrastructure projects in order to drive our share and assert India's position in global trade. We should also bear in mind that growing and healthy businesses across the industry and across multiple industries indeed provide tax revenues that the country needs to fund new infrastructure projects. So it really is a virtuous cycle. If I can have the next slide, please. On policy intent, I think it's important to recognize that logistics is an interconnected business. Can I have the next slide, please? It spans multiple continents. Having policies that are uniform across India's many states and ideally across modes of transportation can unlock further growth and prosperity. And like many in government, we in the private sector believe in the more governance, less government model of growth. And the intent of trade policy should really be to enable faster decision-making and accelerate growth and prosperity. And I think we really welcome the government's habit of interacting closely with industry bodies while framing new policies, and we do hope that this continues. If we move towards to the next slide, please. And then on transparency, I think simpler legislation makes compliance easier, and it also makes compliance more likely whilst reducing deviations. This is really the strength of countries such as the UAE and Singapore. By handling claims and disputes efficiently, including those of, for example, long-standing containers, the end-to-end cost of logistics can reduce significantly. Today, there are thousands of containers stuck in dispute for more than 2 years or held up by customs auctions. These are small issues which need to change. In parallel, we from the industry also need to play our part by improving transparency around the value additions that we make and collectively help in improving the state of logistics in India by sharing global best practices. And that's one of the ways in which we from Maersk seek to be of assistance. If I can have the next slide. And lastly, on connectivity, I think freer and cost-effective movement of goods domestically as well as internationally is really pivotal to the growth of global trade. Faster connectivity to the hinterlands by road, rail, and inland waterways, as well as easier cross-border movements, will be a shot in the arm for Indian businesses. And the value chain today is somewhat distorted in the sense that it may cost a few $100s to move a container from Mundra to Jebel Ali, but it can cost multiple times that to get that container from, let's say, Punjab down to the port in Mundra. Increasingly, connectivity will not just be physical, of course, but also digital. And for India to integrate into global trade ecosystems, it's vital to integrate our systems with global trade networks, such as TradeLens. If I can have the last slide, please. And I think finally, we believe that the ease of doing business framework which are proposed will enhance mutual trust among the varied actors in global trade. Trust really is at the heart of trade, since the time when Roman and Chinese traders sold goods to India and bought goods for their domestic markets. And trust is something that is, of course, built up over a period of time. And the higher the trust factor, the more businesses invest. So the payoff is very significant. And it's essential to cement our place as India in global trade and to enable mutual understanding. So let's all work together to make this happen. The phrase that I used yesterday in the CEO forum is something that really holds true, because as industry and government and all actors partnering together, we can be stronger. Ek aur ek gyara hota hai. 1 and 1 makes 11. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Felder, for that excellent presentation on ease of doing business. Like you say, ek aur ek gyara hota hai. You said that yesterday and you said that today. So we really do trust that many of the points that you made, including those on transparency, connectivity, and digitization and trust, all of them we are able to follow up on all of them. We now have the next speaker, Mr. Pawan Kumar Agarwal, who's Special Secretary Logistics in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in India. And he will talk about the ease of doing business, the government perspective. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ramachandran, and thank you, colleagues, panelists, guests from abroad. I'm grateful to the Ministry of Port, Shipping and Inland Waterways for inviting me to this very prestigious event. Now, I'm expected to speak about ease of doing business India perspective. I think Mr. Steve Felder has given a fantastic backdrop of what is happening globally and what, according to him is happening right in India and the way forward. So I will, take this conversation forward and dwell upon a few other issues, that have not been touched upon by Steve. First issue that I will touch upon is that I'm sure we are all aware that India has done, very well as far as in ease of doing business is concerned. And within that, trading across borders, India has really jumped significantly in the last 1 year. India is ranked at 68, a jump of about 50 points, 50 ranks in, trading across borders. You may also be aware that on Logistics Performance Index, India is ranked as 44. So it means that our rank on trading across borders is, a little worse than what is our rank on Logistics Performance Index. So we are not doing as well on EXIM logistics as we are doing on domestic logistics, perhaps. I do not know whether this would be the right interpretation. But having said this, both on domestic logistics and also EXIM logistics, there is a scope for doing better. I'm sure we are all aware that our current costs, of course, one can argue whether these are the right costs, but for the sake of argument, we'll say that it is at 13% of the GDP, which is on the higher side. And there is a possibility of reducing these costs to about 8%. And this is precisely what the national logistics policy seeks to do. And this national logistics policy, which brings together different ministries, departments, agencies at the national level, at the state government level, the public and the private sector together to bring in a coherent approach to addressing issues of logistics. That is what this policy intends to do. And this is in the works for last 2-3 years. This is in final stages now. And I'll share with you a preview of this policy. The intent of the policy is to reduce the logistic costs from 13% to 8%. A significant reduction, a 40% reduction. And what is the current composition of this 13% costs? And again, these numbers are tentative, and one should not really argue, about those numbers beyond a point, but these are just suggestive. Out of 13% logistic cost, 6% is on transportation, 3.5% is on warehousing, 2.5% is on other inventory costs, and 1% is on order processing and administration. The intent is, and the possibility is, that on transportation, we are able to reduce this cost from 6% to 4%. And that is feasible, because we all know that a huge investment in infrastructure is being made as we speak, and a lot more is likely to happen in future. And more than the investment, the focus is on interconnectivity, a national master plan. How do we create infrastructure in future that addresses the first mile and the last mile issues, that takes care of as much as the trunk ways as the nodes, the terminals and logistic parks? And that is where the role of the logistics division comes in. How do we ensure this infrastructure is interconnected and this is seamless? Then obviously the next choice is that how do we reduce the actual transportation cost by making use of this infrastructure that is put in place? How do we shift as much of our cargo from road to rail and from rail to coastal highways and waterways? And what incentives can be provided? And as we looked at various sectors, particularly in terms of bulk transportation, we find that, in the short term, there may be increase in cost. But I think we have to take a medium to long-term view in these matters. We have to look at not only the economic cost, but also the social cost, the cost of greenhouse gas emissions, if we do not make those shifts possible, and if we look at the overall costs, then perhaps it makes sense for the country to move from road to rail and from rail to coastal and inland waterways. And road, which still constitutes a large part of our transportation costs and transportation in terms of proportionate share, we have to see that how the turnaround time can be improved from currently about 300 kilometers to about 650 kilometers. That is the global norm. On warehousing, I think a lot of investment has come in. Consolidation has happened in the past on warehousing space, and more need to happen. We need to create a facilitative environment for creating more modern warehousing where better standards are maintained, and ensure through robust public-private partnership arrangements, more investments and better kind of warehousing. Inventory carrying costs can be reduced by improving predictability in transportation, and that is where digitization of the cargo movement comes in. If your cargo is going to take this amount of time, you will do your inventory management according to that. You can reduce tremendous cost, and by taking the warehousing and inventory cost together from about 6%, we can reduce it to 3.5%. So that is the expectation. And order processing and administration cost, which is currently 1%, can be reduced to half a percent. And this is precisely the game plan under the National Logistics Policy. Currently, the logistic cost in the country is about $400 million on a base of $3 trillion economy of the country. In 5 years, when the country is a 5 trillion economy, we have to see that our logistic cost continues to be $400 million. So that is 8% of the GDP. So I think that is the game plan, and we do require support of all the stakeholders, from the shipping, ports, and coastal shipping sector, so that we all join hands together to make this happen. I'll stop here, and thank you very much for the opportunity given.
Thank you very much, sir, for that very detailed explanation about the presentation about the National Logistics Policy. And that brings us to the next speaker, who will talk about digitalization, because that is a very important part of ease of doing business. And so I will now request Mr. Emily Hoogsteden, Vice President Commercial of the Port of Rotterdam Authority, to make his presentation on Port of Rotterdam, optimizing supply chains to digitization. Mr. Hoogsteden.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to this wonderful event. Unfortunately, we're not able to meet each other in India today, but being in the situation we're in, I'm glad that we have this opportunity. May I have the presentation, please? Thank you. And please go to the next slide. Rotterdam is the biggest port in Europe. We are very well diversified. All goods you can think of are being handled in our port. May I have the next slide, please?
One second, please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, great. So we're the biggest port in Europe, very well diversified. Last year, we handled 437 million tons of goods in total, 14.3 million TEUs. We're good for 385,000 jobs and an added value of 46 billion euros, or 6% of our gross national product. Luckily, we're happy to say that despite COVID, all functions, all services functioned normally last year, and remained open and performed actually very well. The next slide, please. We have many good ports in Northwestern Europe. There's fierce competition between those ports on the hub function. Connectivity with inland is crucial to be successful. And I'm talking all types of modalities, coastal shipping, train, barge, road, but also pipeline, for instance, for oil products or gases, in the future, hydrogen. Rotterdam is a strong combination of intercontinental deep sea cargo and continental intra-European business. Next slide, please. Today, I would like to focus on digitization. We need to make the logistics chain more visible and transparent in order to make it more reliable, efficient, and less costly, or cheaper, if you like. For many years, Port of Rotterdam has a so-called port community system, through which operational data is exchanged between all parties in the port. More than 4,000 customers and more than 90 million messages per year. However, just exchanging operational data is not enough. We need smart services that help us make the chain more predictable, plannable, and thus reliable. And in every step of the process, Port of Rotterdam has developed digital tools to optimize our processes and businesses, where it's finding routes through Navigate, estimating arrivals through Ship Tracker, port call optimization through Port Exchange, tracking containers through Cargo Tracker, rail efficiency on track, barge planning, NextLogic, and Scope, which checks the reliability of the supply chains. And I'm proud to say that we have signed an MOU with the Indian Ports Association, in which we will give our support to help digitize the Indian major ports. Next slide, please. I would like to focus on two digital solutions today. First one's port call optimization. Port Exchange is a spin-off from Port of Rotterdam. Its aim is to work with the shipping industry to connect port communities worldwide and reduce emissions at large scale and low costs when calling ports. In 2021, Port Exchange was acknowledged with the e-Navigation Award for providing digital solutions that support the shipping industry in reducing its carbon footprint. Port Exchange offers a collaboration platform for shipping companies, agents, terminals, and other service providers to optimally plan, execute, and monitor all activities during a port call in real time and dynamically. By connecting operational data from all local parties involved in a port call, standardizing it, Port Exchange creates one single point of truth and improves the information exchange. This enables just-in-time sailing, optimal vessel planning, and synchronized vessel service windows. It currently operates in 5 major ports, of course Rotterdam, Moerdijk, Houston, Algeciras, and Felixstowe, to support over 100,000 port calls. The Port Exchange trials yield a 100% reduction in bunkering time delay, a 20% reduction in idle time in port calls for liquid bulk, and a 50% reduction in idle time in container port calls. I have the next slide. Here you see just some screenshots as an example how the tool looks like. The next slide, please. Second topic I would like to address is supply chain route planning and marketing of your container segment. RouteScan is a startup powered by the Port of Rotterdam. We believe that transparency in container routing options will facilitate and support sustainable and efficient supply chains. We're proud to work with already 80 partners, amongst which MSC and Hapag-Lloyd, in providing insights in worldwide container shipping routes. RouteScanner is an operator-independent and neutral platform to compare unbiased global transport options and services, and helps to compare on lead time, CO2 emissions, and modal shift options. RouteScanner includes not only the ocean legs, but combines inland connections in an easy-to-use way. So, for instance, from New Delhi to Duisburg, Germany. RouteScanner is always up to date as it uses scheduled data which we source directly from the operators. It is therefore also a marketing channel for operators. Operators can be found by not only existing but also potential new customers. It is for the industry together with the industry. Next slide, please. In a world that is becoming increasingly digital, it is really normal to search for and compare service providers online. However, many ports still market the services in a classical way. attending trade fairs and events, advertising, sending mailings, and writing on their website about the great port infrastructure. However, what the user is really looking for is insight into the conditions offered by a port. Navigate is an online platform that puts your port's entire network of connections at the fingertips of all those that make use of your port. The tool lets users compare various connections to and from your port and helps them plan their optimal cargo routes. They can select the most suitable option based on their own criteria, like preferred modalities, transit time, or CO2 emissions. Of course, more information or a quotation can be requested with just a few clicks. The tool has already proven itself in the Port of Rotterdam, Port of Sohar, and Port of Gdansk. May I have the last slide, please? We are not just operating in Rotterdam. As the Port of Rotterdam Authority, we operate several international business lines, for instance, in Sohar, Oman, and Pecheng in Brazil. That is as a shareholder. But we also act as consultants, trainers, and we give advice. As I mentioned, we are very happy that we signed an MOU with the Ministry of Shipping and can now focus together on digitizing the 12 major ports in India. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a very successful and fruitful conference.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoogsteden. I think that was a very interesting presentation on the importance of digitization in the context of ease of doing business. And as you are aware, we also have a port community system, which is now sought to be upgraded into the National Logistics Portal. And we also thank the Port of Rotterdam for having signed the MOU with us, with IPA. And I'm very glad that we'll take this forward and be able to collaborate with the Port of Rotterdam. I also have an announcement. Can everyone, all the panelists, please switch on your videos, please? So thank you very much again, once again, Mr. Hoogsteden. We now have the next vertical, which is the coastal shipping vertical. And here we have Captain Rakesh Singh, who is Managing Director of the AHV group of companies. Captain Rakesh Singh will be speaking to us about coastal shipping in India, challenges and opportunities. Captain Singh.
Thank you, sir. My dear co-panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we thank the Ministry of Shipping and Ports and FICCI for giving us this opportunity. Can we have the slide, please? Sorry, I can't see the slide on my screen.
Sir, is it visible now?
No, not yet. It's just saying FICCI is starting to share content.
I think all the others.
To us, it is visible. We are able to see.
Okay. Okay. So then I have my.
Visible, so you can carry on. You can carry on.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much. So once again, thank you very much, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. ICC Shipping Association is a representative body of Indian coastal shipping industry, and we have about 18 companies as a member as of today. The next slide, a presentation on coastal shipping in India, challenges and opportunity. Next slide, please. Opportunities versus challenges. We are doing here, making a presentation, a very candid and a very objective presentation on the opportunities and challenges, and we think the best way to do so is to ask some right questions. First question in this series is, have we done the realistic assessment of the opportunities? Have we identified and prioritized the challenges correctly? And are we doing enough to overcome the challenges? We will, as we move along, we'll take the answer to these questions. Next slide, please. Opportunities. Yeah, I'm getting the slides now. The next slide, opportunities. It's very fair and reasonable to assume that a country with such a vast coastline would definitely have potential to significant modal shift from railroad to railways. On the other hand, saturation and crowding in rail and roadways would of course lead to adoption of alternate mode of transportation as it's posted in inland waterways. Next slide, please. Along with this, there are some what we call untapped opportunities or low-hanging opportunities which do exist by way of crew changes at the outside port limit in ports like Mumbai, Cochin. During the COVID regime, we saw Cochin port did some remarkable job of carrying out thousands of crew changes. Same goes for the bunkering facilities at OPL. This matter is under consideration of the ministry at the moment. Last point, when you must have a look at marine supply industry is a 50 billion turnover industry. And these initiatives or opportunities do not require much revenue or investment. These are the issues regarding policies, and we could tap into it very quickly. Some very significant amount of business could come to our Indian kitty. Next slide, please. The facts and figures. The opportunities that I discussed, but the facts and figures do not look very encouraging. If you look at from between 2017 and 21, the increase in the gross tonnage or number of vessels has not been very significant. In fact, the service providing vessels such as tugs, dredgers, MSCs and PSCs as we call them, they are faring better than the actual carrying vessels. The initiative and the intent has been to shift modal shift from railroad, which is not happening. The next slide please. Comparison with rail and road, this is for everyone to see, it has already spoken. Sagarmala plans to double this figure, or at least we intend to do it by 2025 to go to the double-digit figure of the share of the coastal shipping in domestic transportation. Next slide, please. If the opportunities exist, but the figures are not commensurate with the opportunities, there must be some challenges. So have we taken effective steps to overcome the challenges or not? We will see in the subsequent slides. Next slide, please. The peninsular coastline. We often talk about 7,500 kilometers of coastline. We do understand that. But look at the peninsular coastline. Coastal shipment of cargo, particularly small to medium-sized parcels, can never compete with when it comes to the road from Kanda to, let's say, Haldia. So this mistake is often made by painting the coastal shipping with a single stroke of brush, which is not the correct approach. There's really not going to be any single coastal national highway. Next slide, please. The policy initiative in the coastal shipping is and should of course be national, but the implementation and solutions will have to be found at local levels. Some we call it hub and spoke system, or what in Europe they call shipping. More importantly, the greater coordination between the neighboring states, coastal state, is very essential to first identify the potential and then tap it. Some of the states are doing a remarkably good job, like state of Gujarat, Maharashtra. Likewise, on the east coast, West Bengal, the Calcutta being at the hub of the coastal activity, serving neighboring states as well as states countries like Bangladesh and Bhutan. So solutions will have to be found at local levels with a greater coordination. Next slide, please. The challenges thrown by the railroad. Gentlemen, no matter what we say, in business, the community will not switch over to waterborne transportation just for the sake of switching over. The foremost question that traders ask us that can we match the freights offered by rail and road? And unless this issue is addressed, this business is not going to go forward as we would like to, despite potentials. So some of the challenges now we're going to list out quickly. Next slide, please. High finance costs. We all know the interest rate in India high, but more difficult is the short duration of payment, which restricts the cash flow. This has been on for subvention of interest taken. There are some other initiatives being discussed for creating a fund for coastal shipping, etc. And we hope that it goes on a fast track mode. The next slide, please. The fuel cost and alternative. I have a very good news to share that Indian Oil Corporation is organizing a conference in coming weeks in Calcutta, where they're meeting stakeholders and going to discuss ways and means to connect their main LNG supply line by branching it to the ports or terminals like Haldia or Paradip. So this is a very good initiative. Apart from that, we have a out of the box suggestion here that most of the coastal vessels operate on diesel oil, and we request the government that look into the possibility of the vessels which actually carry cargo on completion of voyage with an evidence of having concluded a voyage, if the excise duty refund on the actual fuel consumed would be provided. There was a understandably this was not favored because the government fears that it will give rise to black marketing, etc. And that's the reason we say that verifiable, the voyage where it has been excluded, maybe some kind of a refund on excise duty could be provided in the interim. Next slide, please. Port infrastructure. I do understand that huge investment, major ports and other even bigger private ports have been incentive to provide preferential berth to the coastal shipping. Unfortunately, the bill which the major port authority bill has been passed. It also doesn't address the coastal shipping into it, but I presume with a greater autonomy, the ports will have to would like to create some kind of priority berthing system for the coastal ships. Next topic, please. First and last mile connectivity and multiple handling. Now, this has been a bane for coastal shipping when it comes to competing with railways and roadways. And it not only affects the economy of coastal shipping, but the efficiency. The coastal shipping cannot provide a road-to-road connectivity. Therefore, we have two suggestions here. One is that the government should try and create near the ports non-custom notified CFS. So, as far as my understanding goes, are custom notified. And then some incentive is required to encourage major players in India to invest in ro-ro shipping. We think that's the only solution to really see the coastal shipping growing to the levels we would like to. The ro-ro shipping ships will need to be deployed on the coast of India to override this problem. Next slide, please. Rationalize regulatory regime. As you all know, the correct regulatory regime in India is a convention minus system. Dilution of existing convention. We have been requesting the government that follows the system of Japan, China, Indonesia, Bangladesh, where they have created a separate regulatory body for domestic and of course a regulatory body for international shipping. And this has been very successfully implemented in those countries. And the direct impact of this regulatory, if you call it overload, is that under Indo-Bangla SOP agreement, we have hardly any vessel participating under this agreement. All the vessels from Bangladesh, just because their operating cost is much lower than us because of the less regulatory overload. Next, please. Coastal shipping. Next slide, please. Coastal trade SOP with neighboring countries. We already have the agreement with Bangladesh. I request government of India to speed up signing up agreement with countries like Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and other BIMSTEC nations. This will create the necessary volume and attract the business. Next slide, please. Role of the other government agencies. Today, the agencies like customs and immigrations, they treat coastal shipping at par with exhibitors as far as rules are concerned. This creates lots of hurdles in expenditure, and we not to do away with agriculture, but we ask the government to reduce the human interface and introduce technology so that we can comply online, whatever the requirement may be. The next slide, please. Incentivizing the shippers. I have intentionally kept this as the last slide because this doesn't find much favor. Giving incentive to shippers who choose coastal route for transportation of goods. ICSA has commissioned a study of KPMG in 2013, and it is lying with the ministry. It was well received, but no headway has been made since then. Marco Polo system also has been discussed, and we have to find a way of giving incentive. The last slide, please. Inland waterways. Now, the projection is that the Sagarmala program would require addition of 2,000 new inland vessels in 5 years. We have been requesting the authorities that please bring inland vessels under tonnage tax regime by modifying the Income Tax Act. Today, it is only applies to MSX Act vessel. This will infuse fresh capital in the business. And lastly, we request that the inland waterways and concerned authorities should focus more on ensuring least available. Once the depth is available, all other facilities will follow. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you very much, Captain Rakesh Singh. That was a very realistic presentation and very good suggestion. But since we are short on time, I'll have to move on. And I request Mr. Rahul Modi, the Managing Director, Pushpak Logistics Solution, to now take over. He will make a presentation on coastal container trade and development in India. Can we stick to the time limit of 7 minutes? Because we have 3 more speakers. Thank you so much.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, my voice is clear?
Yes, it
Hello?
is clear. Sir, it is clear.
Good morning. Yeah. To all, thanks for me on this panel. Today, my presentation is on coastal container trade development in India. We might be required to go fast, as it is very detailed topic and there is a time limitation. Can we have a slide, please?
The slide is there, Mr. Modi.
Can you go ahead? Yeah.
Okay. Our Honorable Prime Minister vision is for 5 trillion economy, and the Sagarmala is one of the part of these initiatives. Next slide, please. Just I'm not seeing the slide. The slide is come. Just inform me. I will start. US and European nations are using waterborne transport optimally, which reduce in improvement of transportation cost. Next slide, please. Hello. Am I
Yes,
hearable?
sir. Yes, sir. Your next slide is
Because
there.
something is there. Hello. The present multimodal coastal container service. Yeah, ma'am.
Mr. Rahul, she is putting the
Present
slide.
multimodal.
You kindly continue. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm on slide 3. Present multimodal coastal container services routes. As you can see that these are the current coastal routes used for transporting cargo on the east and west coast. The north, south, and vice versa traffic movement can be efficiently handled through a network of multimodal transport system, including road, rail, and coastal shipping. Alternatively, making the entire journey from north to south or south to north by just road or rail more than half of the distance can put on coastal mode. This can be effectively reduce the cost as well as the negative effects associated with the route. Next slide. Coastal container trade. If we analyze Indian coastal container trade, then in 2002, it was merely 200 TUs. But now in 2020, it has increased to 265,000 TUs. Currently, there are 4 major coastal lines and 90 plus coastal freight forwarders connecting 17 ports, 9 states, and 23 container vessels, ranging from 70 to 4,500 TU size working on this. As you can see, growth is good, but not sufficient. More cargo has to come on the coastal. Next slide, please. Indian coastal container trade potential. Looking through these multimodal lines, coastal shipping has a huge potential to grow over the years. From this 265,000 TUs, it has potential to grow up to 1 million TUs over the next 5 years. It has a potential, but to realize this potential, there are things that we need take care of, like increasing the number of vessels with 100 to 5,000 TUs capacity, need to add more ports to the coastal network, and developing a strong hinterland connectivity for seamless connectivity, with adding more diversified container fleets to cater customers. Next slide, please. As all aware, of using mode, I will not go in the deep, but the main advantage is point-to-point multimodal movement, and the coastal shipping is playing a biggest role to develop India multimodal transport system, as it is reducing maintenance cost, it is protecting highways, and the main point is that, and main advantage is that it adds the vital dimension to the national multimodal transport system and offers round-the-clock service throughout the year. Next slide, please. Roadblocks for the growth of the coastal tonnage. Now I can see this is the advantage. You have to go on the roadblocks.
We are seeing it. Go ahead.
Okay, roadblocks of the growth of the coastal tonnage. In spite of many advantages, coastal shipping is marred by various roadblocks that have blocked the growth of this mode of transportation. Here are the some of the major roadblocks. One major roadblocks is the priority berthing of the coastal vessels at the port. This has been discussed numerous times, but nothing has been fructified. Even today, coastal vessels have to wait for long periods to get a berth. Even if we get a berth, the handling facility for the coastal vessels and cargo at many ports are very poor, and a lot of time is wasted here. Getting long-term funds for the maritime sector at competitive rate is very difficult. And the coastal vessel, as all know, it is a distance dream. Even if we come out from all the difficulties and arrange your finance, arrange vessel, then the public sector companies and the private players do not consider the coastal mode very seriously. One of the biggest roadblock is the hinterland connectivity. On that topic, we have other roadblocks is the higher GST rates on the multimodal coastal multimodal system. If we are offering the multimodal, there is a higher GST rate than the other mode. So it will be a very big roadblock. There is no standardized process for the vessel conversion from foreign flag to Indian flag, and it is also a very big roadblock. Finally, the and green channel at all port is very slow and time consuming. Next slide, please. Challenges. Every opportunities come with the challenges. There are so much of challenges, but some of the challenges are cost relating to port and cargo related charges. First and second mile dock handling cost is very heavy. Connectivity issues where production center is situated in hinterland locations. Ensuring suitable vessel tonnage availability. Return leg cargo. If there is a return leg cargo shortage is very a big challenge. Transit time and berthing delay. As said, berthing and transit time both are the big challenges. Delay in cargo evacuation, and the main issue is that higher container repairing charges, because the container which taking the cargo, it get damaged, and when we are going for the repairing, it is a higher repairing charges we have to pay, as well as the container domesticated charges. If we are buying container from the foreign countries and we domesticated here, there are a huge charges because no one in India is manufacturing a container. So there are the opportunities also to make the container in India. These are the some challenges. Now I'll go with our action. Next slide, please.
Yeah, we'll finish off in 1 minute, please.
Okay, sir. So I will go to final my conclude slide, sir. I'll go to the slide number 12 on the concluding part. Yeah, coastal shipping is an ideal mode to overcome traditional blockage and transport cost. It has target market of 17 states for model ship or to coastal mode, and carrying out potential analysis awareness program in 2021 shall be the first objective. This potential must be unlocked through various initiatives like developing green channels, green freight corridors, effective connectivity between different modes of transport. As mentioned above, suitable origin destinations pair must be identified and suitable vessels as well as container fleets must be secured. It is also very important to take the rail and road operators into the confidence as they feel that the cargo has been taken away from them. Coastal shipping is the only complementing this mode, not competing with them. It is also suggested to create a coastal progress monitoring cell, or as said by other members, coastal national highway. Last but not least, whatever the benefit the coastal shipping is generating, they must be passed on to the users, because without the users, buying coastal shipping cannot survive in the long run. Thank you everyone for providing this wonderful opportunity. I had missed my 1 or 2 slides, but I will share with all of you so you can go with them and you can search on that. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry about that because we are short of time. And Mr. Rahul Modi, thank you very much. Now we have Mr. Wim Dylan from the Port of Antwerp, who will be making a presentation on multimodal logistics and hinterland connectivity. Mr. Dylan, please.
Okay, also warm greetings here from Belgium to our Indian friends this morning or afternoon for you. I will start with the presentation, please. Okay, the Port of Antwerp, next slide. For your information, the Port of Antwerp handled 231 million tons last year. That was a slight decrease compared to the 7 previous years of continued growth. But in container, we grew. For your information, last year we handled 12 million TEU. Next slide, please. Antwerp, as many of you know, is a truly multimodal port. We connect by all means, barge, rail, truck, short sea pipelines, and we offer 24/7 and night logistics. Next slide, please. No less than 7 intermodal hubs are there. Here you see our modal split. Today it is 7% rail, 38% barge, which is a very decent figure, and the rest is truck. We are very ambitious towards the future. By 2030, we expect to double the rail volume and to increase our barge volumes. And we need to do that in order to cope with our future growth figures. Next slide, please. The Port of Antwerp is very well connected to the hinterland. We offer over 200 direct container shuttles a week to all of Europe. And I'm very proud to say that in the past couple of months, this number has even increased by almost 10% to 240 direct container shuttles. Only last week, we accrued new rail connections with Austria, for instance. Next slide, please. Also by barge, we are very well connected. We enjoy a dense network of canals and rivers in our direct hinterland, and we reach our neighboring countries in matters of hours. Even if we go to the Upper Rhine, it's only 70 hours or a little bit more to reach with large volumes those destinations. North France, the Netherlands, Germany, they are all very well connected. Next slide, please. Also, short sea is a way to connect with your hinterland. We offer fast transit times, reliable connections and regular connections. In this chart, you will see our various connections with the Baltic area, UK and Ireland, not unimportant, I think, in this post-Brexit times. And we have a very strong position on the Med region. Next slide, please. What is extremely important to know is also that we are very well connected by pipeline. And as I mentioned yesterday at the CEO forum, the future ports will need to be green ports. And pipeline obviously is a very eco-friendly way of transport. That's why the Port of Antwerp only 3 years ago acquired the national company of pipelines of Belgium. And it's now called PipeLink, a full daughter that exploits a vast part of the Belgian-based network. As you see here on this slide, we are truly connected also with our neighboring countries in various pipeline networks, and we are, in fact, like a spider in the middle of the web. This will be expanded further in order to become also much greener in the future. Next slide, please. Basically, if we look at barge transport, we are currently deploying an action plan for further improvement of the container volumes. We focus on 4 domains. First, we focus on resources, get dedicated people, but also dedicated berths for handling of barge transport. Extremely important. It was already mentioned in previous presentations, the importance of having dedicated facilities for specific use. We also focus on collaboration and planning, connecting our barge traffic system, an obligatory but unique slot system that allows for planning through the central barge planning system. is helping us to reach that seamless transition from one mode to the other. Consolidating volumes in the hinterland is really important. If you know that almost 60% of all calls of barges to Antwerp had only a few containers on board, you can imagine that it's very difficult to start planning. So we also implemented an obligatory minimum volume of container to be shifted, and that had a very positive effect. It was a little bit of a struggle in the beginning, but it's very well accepted now. And last but not least, also very important is digitization to improve your performance in this matter. We are now implementing a system called CPU, Certified Pickup, for imported containers. It is not obligatory yet, but will be in the second half of this year. And it offers a very unique last-minute release code, making sure that the correct people collect the container from the terminal. And also it allows to already, before the imported container has arrived, to book your next mode of transport to the hinterland. Next slide, please. Another practical case of seamless transition is in rail. Antwerp Rail House is a private venture of a few important Antwerp players who built warehouses that have inside sidings and that allow for breakable cargoes like steel and forest products to be unloaded inside the warehouse very close to the waterfront, so that you have a seamless connection even on the last mile. The rail brings the cargo or collects the cargo into this warehouse, after which is being loaded on the ship or transferred from the ship to the hinterland. Next slide, please. Also, the Port of Antwerp, like our friends of Rotterdam, have a connectivity platform. I invite you to visit our website and find your online route planner in this respect. For your information, we are currently upgrading that connectivity platform, so it will offer in the near future more functionalities and even a clearer view on your cargoes from India to Europe and vice versa. All of this is again, in order to build a green port for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Dylan, can we now have Professor Thomas Fitzcotter? He will be speaking on global future trends in multimodal logistics, hinterland connectivity, and coastal shipping.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for inviting me to speak about this topic. Sorry for sending so many slides, so we have to push through. So with today more than 40 subsidiaries, legal entities, and we as Duisburg. So sorry, can we start please with the presentation? Sorry.
But we'll have to finish in 7 minutes, please.
Yeah. Go ahead, please. The next one. The next one. So, no. Go back, please. Go back. It was too. Yeah. Okay. With today more than 40 subsidiaries, legal entities, and JVs, we are involved worldwide, mostly in terminals in the hinterland, but also in seaports like Trieste and with the colleagues in Antwerp. With today 8 bi- and trimodal terminals, we handled last year 4.2 million TEUs, including trailers and swap bodies, because in the hinterland and trans-European traffic, the trailer traffic is coming back dramatically. We handled 4.2 million TEUs and 128 million tons of cargo. And we served last year 20,000 vessels, but 25,000 trains. You see, it switched from vessel to trains. And we are offering with 2.2 million square meters warehouses the best solution for our customers. The next, please. The next slide. So we strongly believe that for sustainable growth of an economy, there has to be a well-developed trimodal infrastructure which connects the most important industrial or logistics areas. This includes an efficient system of bi- and trimodal hubs in the hinterland to create attractive supply chains for all kinds of transport modes. The next, please. The next. And you see, the EU was defining the trans-European transport networks. It's 10 corridors for waterways, for railroads, and for roads, connecting all European countries with these corridors. The next, please. What is important in the hinterland, you have to have a lot of infrastructure for the railways, and especially also for the shunting yards. That's very important, and that we missed, for example, in all our visits in India. That is important to invest. The next, please. You see the different of 100 years, the different in Duisburg, setting the focus of heavy industry today. It's modern logistics. Please, the next. The next one, please. The next. The next. The next. So if you want to grow, now one back, please. What? Yeah, if you want to grow, you need space. And we took over in the area of Duisburg a lot of old steel plants and all the other stuff. And we reconstructed them from heavy industry to modern MMLPs. The next one. The next one. This is a former zinc smeltery, and we developed it to a trimodal hub, Gateway West. For the next, please. This is a bimodal terminal. The next, please. You see, it's very well connected to the railroads, but we have a lot of problems with noise and with traffic with the neighbors located around. The next, please. This is Terminal Lockport 6, the former paper production plant. Today with under construction a new trimodal terminal. DSV is just constructing the warehouse, and we signed a contract with Maersk for the rest of the plant, and all the 42,000 hectares of plot of plants are rented. The next one. This is a new opportunity for a former coal island, the change from coal to a trimodal container hub. Please, the next. This is the new gateway terminal together with COSCO, Hupac, HDS from Rotterdam and Duisburg. The next, please. The next. So this is our connection to China. The next, please. You see here the northern and southern Silk Road, traditionally Germany to Xi'an as the consolidation point. The next, please. And if you are a part of this Silk Road, you have to have, on the other hand of Xi'an, you have to be also a connecting consolidation point to Europe and to the world. The next, please. The next. So this is our idea for India. You know, since 10 years we are involved in some businesses in India, and that was the first idea to implement sustainable system in India for the hinterland connectivity. The next, please. The next. The next. The next. Yeah, this is for trailer traffic. You know, a lot of trailers are not craneable. It's 85% in Europe. And there are a lot of technique also to make it possible to handle non-craneable trailers. Go ahead, please. This is Modalor. This is Cargo Beaver. So we are involved now as shareholder for this system. Go ahead, please. This is Nikrasa. Also an option. This is mega swing. Go ahead, please. The next one. So this is also digitization. That's our rail gate. Next one. To detect the wagon list and loading list within 20 minutes, including the documentation of the seals, unbroken or not unbroken. And this is next, please. Next, 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 and the next. So we are putting all the informations automatically generated by the rail gates into a push cloud. So everyone alongside the Silk Road is able to follow his container volumes. So you can see it by pictures. You can see the loading list, the wagon list. You can see everything. Next one. This is Rivergate, so it's the first time that you can also control the riverside, so you can see what you are putting from or what you are picking on the terminal, putting in the vessel, or vice versa, and you can see also the numbers, and then you can detect all damages and all the numbers. So next, please. You can see this is the result of the Rivergate and Railgate. So next, please. That is finalized. Sorry, thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Slipcocket. Unfortunately, we don't have time. So I would just request Mr. Paliwal, since he has to leave at 12:30, would you like to make some comments at this stage so that even if we overshoot by a few minutes, the last speaker can contribute?
I have a suggestion to make, Mr. Convener, that Mr. Sanjay Murthy can also make quickly his presentation within 4 to 5 minutes. Then we can take 1 or 2 questions, and then I'll do the summing up, if that is okay with you.
Okay. Okay. So he might overshoot by a few minutes. Okay. Mr. Murthy, can you please come over now?
Yeah.
Mr. Murthy is Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the National Industrial Corridor Development Corporation. His presentation is on hinterland connectivity, the role of industrial corridor in India.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Ramchandran, for this opportunity. I thank the Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways for giving this opportunity to speak on the Maritime India Summit 2021. I will try to restrict my presentation to 4 minutes such that we could have a better discussion post that. Next slide, please. The Industrial Corridor Program is facilitated by the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade under the Ministry of Commerce, wherein we propose to set up industrial nodes riding on the backbone of infrastructure projects like railways, roads, etc. The key aspect is to provide green field sustainable industrial parks to serve the production centers as well as the urban centers which serve these centers. Next slide, please. Traditionally, we used to have all these interventions of parks, roads, etc. happening at different times of periods of time. Our endeavor is to be that these are integrated together such that they come and work towards in a synergy for proper efficiencies and delivery. Next slide, please. While hinterland is the topic of today's discussion, our entire corridors nodes that we develop do fall mostly under the hinterlands, which ride on the backbone of the transport corridor. Next slide, please. I will just share with you an example of how we propose to do it. The original two first ones that we started off was the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, which rides on the backbone of the Western DFC. We would have seen that our Honorable Prime Minister inaugurated a section of this corridor itself. We are having on the left side all the industrial nodes that we propose to develop. Out of these, the Chandra Bidkin, the Noida, and the Vikram Udyog Puri one have already been developed, providing proper multimodal connectivity to the industrial estates that have come up here. Especially taking an example of Chandra Bidkin itself, this is just adjacent to the national highway leading to the Mumbai port, as well as to the dry port developed by JNPT there, providing excellent connectivity to the producers there. Industries that have come up there are across from 9 countries itself who have started production there. Similarly, the node that we are developing in Dulera, which is a massive area that has been identified, 22.5 square kilometers is under development, but also the connectivity issue with the Western Dedicated Freight Corridor through their feeder routes is a work in progress, which will connect both the ports at Mudra and Kandla, as well as the JNPT in the south. Next slide, please. Similarly, on the Eastern Dedicated Freight Corridor, we are proposing to develop one node each on of the states that this transfers through. Being a highly populous and dense area, we have industrial manufacturing clusters of smaller range in looking at the constraints of space that is in these states. We have already identified land in all of those 5 locations, and master planning through reputed global consultants is underway in all these 5 locations. Next one, please. Similarly, like that, I will not go into the detail, but this is another one that is there, the Chennai-Bangalore corridor, wherein already 2 projects have been approved at Krishnapatnam and Tumkuru, and master planning for the other areas are also underway. These are riding specifically on the national highway backbone to connect to the ports that are under development. Next slide, please. The other corridors out of the 11 that we are developing, there will be ones on the backbone of, in addition to the national highways, the ones that are coming up are being proposed by DFC, which is around 4,000 kilometers of DPR on the East Coast corridor, East-West corridor, and North-South corridor, which will facilitate the movement of goods to the ports once these corridors of dedicated freight corridors also come up. Next slide, please. So in this approvals that we have got in December 20, we are proposing to develop 11 corridors with 32 nodes, which facilitates creation of such type of plug-and-play infrastructure well in demand and ensuring global manufacturing does come up in these locations. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We are also doing some multimodal connectivity projects, both at Dadri in UP as well as in Mangal Chaudhary in Haryana, riding on both the EDFC as well as Western DFC. These are also projects which have been approved and are under implementation at the moment. Next slide, please. We are also supporting the next slide, please. We are also supporting the Ministry Department of DPIIT on the preparation of a national master plan to ensure that all infrastructure providers, be it road, telecom, highways, shipping, etc., are able to show their work in a comprehensive manner on one platform, enabling prioritization, optimization, synchronization, and analytical tools to be provided to all users to ensure that there is proper, seamless, multimodal connectivity for movement of people and goods. Next slide, please. These are being developed on ISRO maps through the agency of MITI, which is BISAC-N, which will provide such type of features to the users at one platform, enabling better integration of all the projects which are coming up in the future. Next slide, please. The NICDC is also supporting all the user agencies through its project called LDP, wherein we are providing tracking and trace facilities for EXIM containers. Next slide, please. Wherein all the ports, 106 CFCs and 14 ICDs and 42 toll plazas are already providing this up-to-date information. This has enabled a great deal of efficiencies in the performance of all the ports as well as other service providers. Next slide, please. Especially in the terms of transparency and visibility of the container movement, we are now tracking 31 million EXIM containers. We have observed the dwell time reduction in import and export cycles. We have also seen that happen in the ICD and CFS also happening, primarily because of the visibility that this provides and the improvement in infrastructure and timings that each of these stakeholders are undertaking on their own based on the analytical reports that this facility is providing. This is what we are providing as to the sector as such, and we look forward to the cooperation and support of everyone in going forward towards this end. Thank you so much.
To request Mr. Sunil Saliwal to now sum up and just while before that to the Q&A session. Thank you.
I think we cannot have many questions now, but one or two good questions are there. So if convener permits, I would just like to pose them to the concerned speakers. One question is addressed to Mr. Emile Hoogsteden. This is regarding on how to leverage data analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence in improving port logistics, and that too in context of India.
Thank you very much for that great question. I think with all technical requirements, it all starts with trust. So it's much more, if you like, a mental shift than technological shift. Technology can assist with any request one would have, but it has to, people, parties, companies has to be open to share information, to share data, to make joint plannings. That is the beginning. Not keep all your cards to your chest, as we say in Dutch, but open up, put them on the table, and share with your companies in the supply chain, because only on that way you can have a better performance. And only in that way you can make the cake bigger for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Hoogsteden. That's a very important point you said, that we should be willing to share information with others. Then only we'll be able to make use of this latest technological tools. One more question we will take, and then I'll do the summing up. This is addressed to Mr. Pawan Agrawal. Sir, the question is that, when we are, like rightly you said, that from 13% to 8%, we want to bring the Indian logistics cost. So how can the private sector contribute in this? Mr. Agrawal, sir. So maybe we can take this question later through email with him. It has been a very interesting session, and all the 8 speakers have given us a very good perspective of the international situation, and also how it applies to Indian context for the 3 major verticals that we have taken up in this session. And we are indeed grateful to them because some of them have spared their time despite inconvenience in terms of the time gap between the Indian time and the time in their country. And Mr. Felder, he has very nicely covered the topic of importance of ease of doing business in increasing the global trade of the country, how we have to go on the path of EODB, ease of doing business, if we want to improve our share in the global trade. Mr. Agrawal has told us about the aim of the Government of India to bring down the logistics cost from 13% to 8%. And he has rightly identified various factors which are important in that, and especially how we need to bring down the inventory cost and the warehousing cost if we have to achieve this objective that we have set for ourselves. We are thankful to Mr. Hoogsteden, who has told how Port of Rotterdam has used digitization to improve its reach and services. And and we are very happy that you have signed the MOU with our port, our IPA, so that we can also learn from that experience and improve our services here. We are very thankful to Captain Rakesh Singh, who has told the current bottlenecks and also have given some very practical suggestions on how to meet these challenges which we are facing in terms of coastal shipping in India, and one of them being the geographical shape itself, because it is a peninsular country. So the movement across the land may be much shorter, rather than going around the peninsula. So how we can tackle that situation? We are thankful to you, Mr. Singh. Then we are thankful to Mr. Rahul Modi, who has told us about how we have achieved a good growth between 2002 and 2020, but how much needs to be done, what are the roadblocks that we are likely to face, and how to go around them. We are very thankful to Mr. Dillon, who has told us how the port of Antwerp has come to be a truly multimodal port, and how they are looking ahead in connectivity to the hinterland so that they continue to grow and continue to serve their customers in hinterland in a better manner. We are very thankful to Professor Shripkhoter, and we are sorry that we didn't have enough time. We could have learned a lot from his presentation, but due to paucity of time, he had to go fast through his presentation. But he has told us this very interesting aspect that, you know, how the existing cold storage area, how the existing industries, industrial area, they have been utilized for the development of the port. And we are also very thankful to Mr. Sanjay Murthy, who has told us about these various freight corridors which are being developed on the western side and the eastern side of the country. In our current budget also, new areas have been announced, and how industrial nodes are being set up on these freight corridors so that convergence is there, and these contribute to the growth of the country. It was a very, very interesting and enlightening session. We are very thankful to all the speakers. Thank you for sparing your time. We are thankful to the visitors and other participants who have participated in a very lively manner. In fact, there are a lot of questions I see in the chat box, but due to a lack of time, we are not able to take that. Maybe they can get in touch with the concerned speakers through emails and get those answers. Again, thanks a lot to all of you. We are thankful to Mr. T.K. Ramachandran for guiding this session in a very lively manner. Thank you, sir.
So thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Namaste.
Namaskar.
Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Namaste.
Bye.
Thank you very much.